All right. Well, that was dramatic. That was cool. Leading us in. Welcome everyone to the Mental Endurance for 2021 with Vanessa Faye Foerster. We also have our special guest here, Brittany, and we have Jamila, our community manager of the Feisty team. Hello everyone. First of all, we just want to know where are you watching from? So type into the chat box. Let us know where you're watching from. And also, or tell us about your goals. Tell us about your goals for 2021. We'd love to hear them. And if you don't have any goals, that's okay. Because at the end of this, we're going to help. You'll have the skills to make some. So yeah, I'm Ellen. I am the creative director from Live Feisty Media. I also do a lot of the content for Feisty Triathlon. And I'm here to welcome you to Mental Endurance for 2021, the live podcast launch for our new podcast with Vanessa Faye Foerster called Mental Endurance. You probably know the Train Your Mind podcast, which was part of the IronWomen miniseries that Vanessa kickstarted before the new year. And it was so popular, we decided to bring it back with shiny new name, rebrand it, and launch it with this workshop. So just before we get started, I'm going to have everyone open up their phone if you have it handy. And we're going to hit the subscribe button in your favorite podcast platform. So I have Google Podcasts up right now, or Apple Podcasts. And we have a special prize, 2 special prizes that we'll be giving away at the end. Yes, Vanessa is subscribing to the podcast. So 2 prizes, and to win the prizes, we want you to hit the subscribe button, go down and write us a review. And you can screenshot that review, tag us on social, and tag Feisty Triathlon at Feisty Triathlon on social, and you'll be entered to win the grand prizes. So we have a one-on-one session with Vanessa, a coaching session, which is incredibly valuable, and also $25 to the Feisty shop. So I don't know about you, but it does kind of feel like this whole COVID thing is like the world's longest endurance event. And so I think we could all use some little help to increase our mental endurance, especially as athletes. So with no further ado, let's do it, Vanessa.
Let's do it. I love it. First of all, thank you to everyone who has put in where they're coming from. I love to see the locations. It's so fun. San Diego, Netherlands, New Jersey, gosh, all over. So fun. Keep putting it in there. Before I jump in, as Ellen said, I'm Vanessa Foerster, and I am the host of the spanking new podcast called Mental Endurance. And I would like to take a second to thank the Live Feisty team for all they've done to help get this podcast off the ground. This live launch was their idea, and I'm here for it because we're going to have a lot of fun. If you're new to me and new to my work, welcome. I'm so glad you're here. And here's what I'm about. I am on a mission to change the way triathletes train. I believe a bit of what's missing from our training is our humanness, which is why I help triathletes build mental endurance to match their physical endurance, hence the name of this podcast. There is so much out there that tells us that we have to buy the fanciest bike or upgrade to the newest recovery tactics or train half of our waking hours or maybe race as many races around the circuit as possible when there is racing. And while some people find success that way, it's not the only way. And that is what that's what I want to bring to this podcast, is showing you a different way. I used to think personally that peak performance was only reserved for the naturally gifted, and the rest of us were just kind of destined for whatever results we had. But now I know that that's not true, because I personally trained my brain like I trained my body. And my result was a Kona qualification without an athletic upbringing or a series of podium finishes. But beyond that, I'm a more confident, bold, trusting, and unapologetic person and I'm unapologetic in who I am and what I stand for. And if you are a fan of the Feisty brand, that is what we're all about. And that is what I'm here to show you as well. Because in my life, when I underperformed on the race course, I also underperformed in my life. And mental endurance is not something that is only available to the gifted. And I'm so excited to have my special guest here, Brittany, who's joining. We'll get into some specifics with Brittany, but that's who the other person's on the screen with me. She is one of the athletes that I work with. And the reason I invited her on is because the beginning stages of this podcast, when I first launched on the IronWomen series, I spent a lot of time sharing stories about myself, which I think are highly valuable. But for this event, I wanted to bring in someone else that I work with so you can see the work, what happens when you put it into practice on a daily basis. And that's what Brittany has done. And she is such an amazing example of what's possible. And the fact that, blush it, you are. The fact that mental endurance is not the same as mental toughness. I was actually just having the same conversation about this earlier today. And a lot of us that are driven athletes, we assume that if we're able to suffer physically, and that means we can handle anything emotionally. And that's just not true. That's the opposite. It's backwards. When we work on our emotional health, when we work on our mental endurance, then it unlocks more for us in the physical bit, which I'll talk more about in just a little bit when I talk about, what you do doesn't make who you are. So Brittany's here. She's joining us. We're going to talk about some topics. The idea here is to give you a different viewpoint into what I wanted to talk about. I was thinking about what I wanted to talk about in this season opener of this new podcast. And I think it's felt very necessary to address where we are now with the state of the world and racing and what effect that can have on our motivation. But I also wanted to talk about your athletic identity and how the two are connected. And that's really what we're going to talk about. I'm going to share, kind of similar to past podcast episodes of how I kind of give an offering, bring Brittany in, we'll coach on it, we'll talk on it, talk about our experience, and it's going to be so much information for you. If you are tuning in live on Facebook or YouTube, hello, thank you for being here. You have the opportunity to ask questions. Just drop them in the comment box wherever you are, YouTube, Facebook, whatever's there for you, and we'll get to them. And yeah, I think that feels like a good preface for where we're going. So first and foremost, I want to talk about the athletic identity piece. I actually did do a separate episode in the original podcast called What You Do versus Who You Are. And it's not the same avenue that I want to take today. I want to talk about how triathlon might be what you do, but who you are is a human with equal amounts of doubt and stress and guilt and worry and maybe some inadequacy, but also so much pride and commitment and joy and courage and whatever other positive emotions come with that. And you take those emotions with you into triathlon, whether you like it or not. Part of what I do is help you use those feelings as fuel. So I don't want you to negate that human and emotional part of you. This podcast is meant to help you get more in touch with that part of you, because on the other side are some of your best race results that are just waiting for you. Okay. Another note I wanted to say about Brittany. Okay. First of all, listen to everything she says. Okay. As I already mentioned, she's an example of what's possible for everyone tuning in, even more so now without races. Okay. So really, really, really important. When I was preparing for this, I decided to look up the definition of what athletic identity is. So I'm going to tell you what it is. There was a study done in 1993, and it's defined as the degree to which an individual identifies with the athlete role and looks to others for acknowledgement of that role. So 2 parts: identifies with the athlete role and looks to others for acknowledgement. I find this very interesting because it centers on the role, or another way to think about that is like some behaviors and the opinions of others. So Brittany, before I go more, I want to know what your thoughts on this are. How did you define, what are your thoughts on the definition, but also how did you define your athletic identity before we started working together, which was also after COVID started, I would like to point out.
That is true. Yeah. So hearing that definition, I'm like immediately thinking about so many sessions that we've already had together where showing up, believing that you are an athlete and that you are worthy of your training has been revolutionary for me. And I think something that can be accessible for everyone who wants to take on triathlon or marathons or long distance swimming or cycling or any sort of endurance athlete event or any athletic event, showing up believing I am this athlete and I deserve this space and I love what I do. The second part of that definition makes me, in the past would have been like, yep, that is 100% true. You definitely need outside validation. Someone needs to tell you that you are an athlete, and that's how you know. And now, having worked with Vanessa and really looking at how I show up, that makes me go, wait, put the brakes on. That outside validation is not as crucial as the inward belief and that inward discovery within yourself that showing up is primary. Waiting for someone to tell you that it's okay to start swimming and jump in the pool and that you are an athlete is a long wait. And while it might be immediately gratifying to have someone say, you're really fast, you're an athlete, you're a runner, it's not sustainable over the course of training. I don't know if other people have that kind of experience, but it's not an overnight thing. Obviously, I'm still working on it because I love outside validation. Oh, I love it. But
we're continuing to work on that one.
Exactly. I've become so much more aware, and so saying, okay, what do I need for within myself, and not looking for it on the outside, which also is important, not just for my athletic pursuits, but every single thing I do. It's a running theme.
Yeah. Because as I say all the time, how you do anything is how you do everything.
100%.
Tell me about the worthy of training. How did you decide that you were worthy of your training?
Right. This idea, I think I also did not have the most athletic upbringing. We were active, but certainly not like I was destined for, the Olympics at 4. I was probably like climbing a tree, but
as you should when you're 4.
Yeah, exactly. Wait, I don't know about 4. Maybe
not 4. Maybe not 4. 7.
Yeah, but saying that this time and this space that I've created for myself for my athletic training is worthwhile because I'm an individual and unique, and this is how I want to spend my time. And to carve out that. Also, something that we've worked on together is just because I feel like, but I should be doing a million other things and helping a million other people. I'll get to that, but being able to show up for myself and give myself that allows me to take that to every relationship, to my marriage, to my family, to be able to show up 100% for them, just like I show up 100% for myself.
And I would add to that, and I'm interested to know what your thoughts on, when you choose to show up, you're not only just showing up for the training, but you're showing up for standing in for who you want to be.
Yes.
Right? Because what I've noticed is that athletes that struggle with this is that they don't know who they are, or they just haven't taken the time to decide to actively think about the person that they want to be. And so then they attach themselves to the athlete and triathlete only, which means like they're 100% defined by what they do on the race course, right?
Yeah.
So the behaviors that they're engaging in and the race results become the primary source of definition.
Right.
So if it's interrupted, like it is now, there seems to be this void, this unavoidable void or emptiness of sorts.
Yeah, there's almost a lack of joy in the training because you're looking and searching for those results, that validation again, rather than, wow, it's just amazing to be able to run outside or be able to participate in this activity.
Yeah, and create the joy for yourself. Because on the other side of it, when you're looking for the validation, what ends up happening is it's a very powerless position to be in, because you're allowing the outside circumstances to define you and how you want to feel about yourself, but also how you want to feel just in general. And that's very, very, very dangerous, my friends. And if you're doing that, nothing has gone wrong. Like, we all experience this because we're humans, and we experience 50% negative emotion and 50% positive emotion. And it just happens. We have to be very aware of the patterns and where we attach our emotional energy to, because you can't control the world. If we could, I'd be all in. I would have figured it out by now. But we can't. So the next best option is deciding who you are, separate but related to who you are as an athlete. Which I think the most useful way is to start by how you want to feel, because feelings fuel us, right? What do you want to feel on a more daily basis? What do you want to feel at your next key session? What do you want to feel when you cross your next finish line, virtual or otherwise? Do you remember when we did this, Brittany?
I do.
When you decided what type of athlete you wanted to be?
Yes.
Do you remember what you answered?
I said I wanted to be a joyful athlete, a grateful athlete, and I think this word sent us into like.
I wasn't going to bring that one up, but you can.
Okay, I wanted to be indefatigable, which
tell them what that means.
It just means that I won't be tired. I'll feel tired, but I will persevere through. But that's like one of those SAT words that you can drop in a conversation. And
I've tried since you taught me, and it didn't really work very well. It didn't work. The other thing that you told me was brave and curious.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Curiosity is a huge theme running for me currently.
Tell me about that. What has shifted for you? Why has that been useful?
Yeah, it helps to reassess training sessions and larger goals and my motivation. So instead of looking at a training session and looking at how many watts did I put out, and how is my worthiness attached to that? Did I do what I was supposed to do? Am I going to get a pat on the back from a coach, or is the coach going to be like, this girl, what is she doing? But instead staying curious and saying, okay, what can I do with this session? Where can I go during this interval? Remove that self-worth part and replaced it with the discovery and the joy and the courage and the indefatigableness of it all.
Make it longer. Why not?
I know. I'm just going to keep adding. So that coming into every training session and then evaluating from that ontological mode of saying, okay, put the curiosity lens on and what can I discover? I think too, that helped stay motivated when races are touch and go and there's not a lot immediately available and holding you accountable. The curiosity aspect helped me get up and say, I want to find out. Yeah. I'm so curious.
It gave you a little nudge, it sounds like.
It did, for sure.
Tell me, where do you, so that's kind of like where curiosity was really useful for you. Where have you found like resistance to it? Where has it still been a struggle for you? I think that this could be really interesting to maybe find some relation. Oh, sorry about that.
I'm so curious. What is that dog thinking? I mean, so it's not an overnight, hey, now I'm curious and I don't care about results anymore and I don't get self-conscious and I don't spiral out of control with thoughts that aren't helpful. No. Happens all the time. Happened like today. But the resistance, I think, comes from getting distracted by data, by numbers, getting distracted by thoughts of I should be doing something else, or oh, this person is doing these kinds of workouts, I should be doing that instead of my own training plan. The resistance of like finding out what are other people doing, which I can mask in the curious part of it, but it doesn't serve me and my training and my individual pursuit. And also, it can take on that mask of like, I'm just checking what other people are up to. I can just look at Strava and see how far did this person run today, instead of asking it about myself and turning it back in.
So kind of in that curiosity, taking you down that compare and despair.
Oh yeah.
Right. And I think a lot of us can relate to that, and probably a lot of people tuning in, just recognizing that it doesn't mean that when you get curious, everything's just solved for you, but it gives you a different connection to your training. And then it reveals something new, right? Because then we've been working on the compare and despair. And then what do we need to address as it relates to that? And how can we make it so that you are not only getting what you need out of the training, but also addressing this other side that tends to be a pattern for you as well.
Yes,
right?
For sure.
Yeah. So I feel like, when it comes to thinking about athletic identity and that definition that I found and I was really interested in, I think that there's this opportunity to just like ditch this idea of athletic identity. And instead, I'm choosing to call it our athletic nature. Like, let's all work towards our individual yet collective athletic nature, which I think we can think about it as the inherent qualities that you bring to your sport, right? So Brittany has chosen joy and courage and indefatigableness and being brave. I'm not going to try that word again. So she's chosen those, and we can each decide what we want that to be for us, right? You get to decide who you want to be as a person, what you want to feel, how you want to show up, the inherent nature of you, which then carries into sport. Let's see. We've had people, they're writing. I'm just looking at the comments. Yes, my dog agrees. Here. Sorry for the dog barking. Okay, I'm going to get to a question a little bit. But before we get there, I was thinking more about curiosity. And is there anything else that you would add about how you define your athletic nature, not identity, athletic nature now, before we move on?
Yeah, I think we've kind of nailed it.
Okay.
Let's keep going.
Yeah. So if we are bringing like full circle on the original definition of that athletic identity, I want to add something. If you remember, the other piece was looking to the others for acknowledgement of the role. And when you decide on your athletic nature, those other people support and uplift more of who you want to be versus you going outside of yourself for validation. You don't even need the acknowledgement or validation. The right people are part of your experience to feel those emotions more. Okay. So for those of you that are listening, watching live, but also listening after the fact, take some time to define your athletic nature for yourself. And the way I want you to think about doing this is to pick 3 to 5 ways that you want to feel. Okay, right now, as we're patiently awaiting races to come back to resume, it's the perfect time to spend time in this question. And what you'll find is that you don't need races to capitalize on your athletic nature, right? You don't need a race. You don't need a race result. You don't need a podium to make you feel a certain way. You can feel that now. And that's a much more emotionally empowering place to be. And it will also change the game on your motivation, which Brittany's already talked about. She talked about how that curiosity kind of changed her motivation, but we'll hold off on that in a second. I did see a question come through that I want to answer. Okay, so Christina says, how do you build trust in yourself and your training to feel less anxious about taking rest days and easier days? Oh, this is a great question. This is a really great question. I'll answer. And if Brittany, you want to add something, you're more than welcome to add. So the first thing, what popped in my head when I read, first of all, I love this question because leading with the idea of building trust is hugely important. Brittany will tell you, and every athlete I work with, we talk about what it means to build self-trust and having your own back in decisions that you make. And I think ultimately, Christina, your question talks about feeling less anxious about taking rest days and easier days. And the first answer to this question I would offer is being willing to release some of the self-judgment, because the fact that you have the anxiety about it and you're willing to ask the question is because it's rooted in thinking that you're doing something wrong. Okay. So first we have to recognize that you're not doing anything wrong. You know, in part of our training as we progress as athletes, you have to rest in order to get stronger. You don't get stronger when you're swimming, biking, or running. You get stronger when you're sitting here, assuming that you're sitting and not on the bike right now, listening to me talk or watching Netflix. When you're building in that rest, that's when your muscle fibers are rebuilding and getting stronger. So it's really important to have that difference in your training and the intensity versus the recovery. But I can say that, and intellectually you can say, oh yeah, I get it. But then when there's this judgment spiraling about taking an easier day or taking a complete day off, that's where there's conflict. So you have to be willing to release the judgment and get curious about how, it's a great word that Brittany's been talking about, get curious about how your training is actually elevated by taking the days off or taking the recovery, right? What if it's exactly what you need, instead of thinking the opposite, which is, oh my gosh, I'm going to miss out, or I'm not going to get stronger, or anything along those lines. Okay. Brittany, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I think educating yourself on kind of the science of recovery, that helped me trust in taking the recovery time, knowing that your fitness consolidates on that time off, and then showing up to your tough training sessions with really focused, really intentional, really efficient mental set to do that workout. Will make you really trust in your ability to show up for everything on your plan, be it recovery day or hard workout day. And I think Vanessa and you and I have talked about that. Like, once you've made a decision to trust it, is something that we build.
Yeah. And it's almost like a permission slip for yourself in the beginning. Like, let me just give myself the permission, see what happens. And then the trust builds upon itself. Right. Yeah. I love that. I love that question. Okay. Let's dive into motivation, because you kind of went down that route in terms of the curiosity piece. And some people that are listening might be feeling uninspired to train right now, or you might go through a roller coaster. If you're a human, you might go through a roller coaster of some weeks you're kind of in high motivation, other weeks you're kind of dropping low. Same deal. Like, the reason I wanted to answer this question is because the same is true here. First and foremost, we have to drop the self-judgment and the shoulds. If you work with me, you hear me say this all the time. Stop shoulding on yourself. It doesn't get you anywhere. Curiosity is your biggest ally here, because you don't have to train more to feel better. If you want to change your relationship with your training, i.e. be more motivated to train, if you want to change your relationship with training, you have to change your thoughts about it. Okay, so that's where I want to start when we diving into motivation, because your relationship with anything and anyone, really, so that means your relationship with your training, with food, with your work, with your spouse or your partner, your in-laws, all of those relationships are just a collection of thoughts that you have about that thing or person. So if your primary thought about your training is something like, oh, I don't want to do this, then that's dictating the exact experience that you're going to have. So a colleague of mine shared this analogy with me earlier today, and I think it is perfect for this. If you take a video with your iPhone and you go back and watch it, you know that little stream at the bottom that shows you like all the frames? You can kind of pause it frame for frame there at the bottom. You essentially get to like stretch out the whole video. I want you to think about, you can do the same thing with your thinking. So stay with me here. When you think, ugh, I don't want to do this. And I know that thought because I have it too. That usually follows something like, this is going to be hard, or I'm not going to enjoy this, right? You start by making a somewhat arbitrary determination of the effort and the enjoyment, and then you just write yourself off before you even start. But you can pause before following that trail that your brain leads you on, because you know where that trail leads. If you really want to go there, you always can, because you know what happens when you think, oh, I just don't want to do this. You end up not doing it, and then you sit on the couch and eat bonbons. Like, we know where that trail goes. Or maybe you sit on a log because we're out on a trail. But it's not the only option, is the point. Like, you know where that series of thinking goes, but it's not the only option. You can pause. Imagine that you're at a fork in a trail, actually. And to the left, you know where that trail goes. But to the right, you get to ask, am I making this harder by thinking this is harder? Am I making this harder by thinking this is harder? I'm making it harder by thinking harder on myself than it needs to be. And if you're feeling any resistance to that question, as I kind of repeated it, it's because you aren't truly committed to being motivated. So no judgment there, but you have to be willing to be committed. You have to be willing to change how you're thinking about it in order to get different results for your choices. So being motivated, I want you to think about it like a choice that you make to change your relationship with your training, to be more curious in what you can get out of your training. Not because it needs to be like the highest intensity, go, 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 like, on peak Ironman training for the rest of the year, right? Like, there's different levels of training and different seasons of the training. But it's still a choice that you make in the relationship you have with your training, and to change the way you think about your training, right? For me, that has looked like recently, it's looked like finding small progress each week. And sometimes that progress is simply getting outside in the snow or in the cold weather for more training sessions, because I'm here in Bozeman, Montana, and I live in the tundra. So, and Brittany's in LA, so different, but cold there.
We had snow.
I know.
On the beach.
You match with my snow. So one more thing I want to say about motivation before I ask Brittany to come in on this. If you saw today, the Feisty Triathlon made this cool little quote card from a quote that I had on a different podcast, where I said, enduring mentally means holding on to the belief that a different outcome is possible. And you might read that and think bigger picture. You might think like a different outcome being a big goal that you want to achieve on the race course. But that also applies to a different outcome tomorrow or next week, right? Whenever you decide to make a different decision in support of who you want to be, which includes your athletic nature, right? Brittany, what are your thoughts? What's your take on motivation? How do you stay motivated?
Yeah, I have been thinking about this a lot recently because there aren't a lot of races. And I think what really helps to motivate me out, in addition to being curious, and I think kind of orthogonally related, is really developing a mastery of the things I'm passionate about. So outside of sport, I am a professional puppeteer.
So cool, everyone, right?
It's
so
true.
Cool.
We exist. So I
on Jurassic Park.
Yeah, before the COVID kind of shut down, I was on a national touring show called Jurassic World Live Tour. And I was the puppet captain on the show and one of the lead puppeteers on the show. But I've been doing puppetry for a long time. And so what was great about this show is we were doing hundreds of shows. And then do shows in one city and then the next city and the next city. So we're doing hundreds of shows. If anyone saw it, awesome. Tell me in the comments, because I'm really curious about that. But yeah, every single show was a chance, because I got to do lots of different styles of puppetry. I got to be in this 140-pound baby stegosaurus. I got to be in a 120-pound raptor. I got to work the
How many people get to say that? I mean, come on. That's so cool.
Yeah, there's like 6 of us. But yeah, I got to work the T-Rex, which was really cool, and learn about the mechanics of that, and remote operations. And every single show was a chance to get it just a little bit better, just make it a little bit more believable, because that is what puppetry is. It's like this inanimate object, and you have to collaborate with everyone watching, saying like, you and I both know this is not real, but we're gonna pretend together. So I have to make it look like T-Rex, even though she is made of foam and wires, that she is breathing and she is intentionally walking towards the heroes and avoiding fire, because we had fire in the show too. Right. So that idea of like, that's something. So you're doing hundreds of shows. It's the same show every single time. Same thing. But it's those subtle, tiny things that would keep me motivated to show up to do the show.
Incremental, better.
Very, very.
Yeah.
Because I had to still do the same choreography, but how could I bring some more intention to what I was doing? So in a similar vein, coming to triathlon, which I still trained as a triathlete while on tour, which was an adventure unto itself. I've swam in so many different YMCAs all over the country. I got to tell you, there's some amazing YMCAs out there. Indianapolis has a great one. If anyone's from Indianapolis, hats off to you. Anyway, so I was still motivated to train as a triathlete, which also kept me fit for the show. But then coming home from COVID, being like, well, now I don't have a show or races. The motivation I would found is, how can I master a running skill, a cycling skill? And I was working on it, but I think there was a breakthrough session that Vanessa and we had, and I applied the work that we had talked about to an indoor cycling session that I knew I could do, but the intention and effort I brought to that, I think I finished and I was crying, and I think I sent you like a video of me just like ugly crying about how.
I didn't know you were crying in that video.
Well, I was
sweat crying.
I cleaned up, but that like idea of the intentional training, just like T-Rex being intentional, but coming into each interval. And what I discovered is I had it all along. I'd always been able to manipulate T-Rex or do this puppet thing. And I've always been able to achieve more power on the bike. I just didn't let myself believe it and go there intentionally. So the idea of like, let's get curious and let's master this one interval and see what happens, motivated the next interval, which then motivated my next workout, which then motivated me to stay engaged as a triathlete and racing. Also over the summer, I would set little goals for myself using Strava and I found this amazing group of ocean swimmers that they like are my heart and my family. But I designed my own triathlon. I called it the Choose Your Own Triathlon, and anyone could do anything. So I had people show up, and we did it very safe, masks and distance, and we all were already kind of our own germ pod. But I had people show up who did like inline skating instead of running. People who were like curious about triathlon, but they're like, I'm going to swim and I'm going to run. So designing little moments for myself of self-mastery, but also integrating the people that I see around me who also love sport.
Yeah.
And how they could develop their own mastery, I think was those moments of reigniting the motivational fire.
And it also sounds like, it started with you deciding not to like pull back entirely, right? And finding the opportunities to create that joy for you and those emotions that you had decided on, right? That was your joy with those friends with that training group, or even designing your own triathlon, even if you did it by yourself, right? And the same is true when it comes to the skills that you chose to work on, right? It's like these small incremental betterments that we can make within ourselves that can really change how we show up when races are back on, and when we might find it easier to find motivation. I put that in air quotes because we often associate having a race on the schedule as something that we can work towards and might create some external motivation for us. So I think that I love the fact that you just brought up that your opportunity to not only find the joy in it, but take your motivation and build momentum from it, right? Because there's like this causal relationship when it comes to motivation and momentum, and then you create a cycle, even if it's small pieces of motivation, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think also the idea of like, I'm ready for anything. Like when races come back, I want to be ready. When the show comes back and we can fill arenas with 2,000 people, it's gonna be a while. It's gonna be a while. I want to be ready. I so want to be there. And I also, full disclosure, when we got sent home from tour, I like took 2 weeks off and I was like, I'm gonna curl up and I just need to like decompress. And I wasn't motivated because I was like, it kind of felt like a breakup. You know, like,
and like that questioning, those like question air bubbles around the head, like what's happening? Where do we go from here?
Yeah. So I also think that I had to relieve myself of that judgment of like, how could you possibly give up on yourself? And it was like, okay, it was 2 weeks where you just needed to like not do anything. Is totally okay. And then to become curious, like, okay, why did I need that time? Oh, because I was feeling really heartbroken about losing these other opportunities.
Yeah, it's like real grief.
Yeah.
That we experience. Real grief.
Yeah.
I had one of the podcast listeners actually asked me a question about canceled events and that piece, and it's very much a grief experience. Right. So Valerie says in the comments, well, we do the race for the bling, which may be true, Valerie, but you can't get bling right now. So what else are you going to do it for? Because really, when I talk about feelings being fuel, the bling is fun. It's great to have your trophies or your medals hanging. But really, the reason that we do or don't do anything in our lives is based on how we want to feel. So it's what the bling brings for you. So Valerie, I'd love for you to answer, like, when you get that medal around your neck, how do you feel? How do you feel? Accomplished, proud, confident, whatever it is, that's what you're really going for. The bling is just like the fun little side effect. And so whatever emotion you decide on, that can be part of your athletic nature that we started talking about in the beginning. So
I feel like you would Maria Kondo that, like you would hold your bling and be like, thank you, bling. Does this bring joy?
Yes. Does this bring confidence? Does this bring accomplishment? Does this bring, let's just go through the
I just got a pop up from Marissa McKee's about her question. Any tips on imposter syndrome?
Yes, I saw that one, and I'm going to pause on that question because I'm going to do an entire podcast episode on imposter syndrome. So that is coming. It is already in the works, Marissa. Don't you worry. That's a whole nother episode on its own. So thank you for
with the club, the imposter syndrome club.
Yes. Oh, Valerie says she wants to feel strong.
Good.
You also that was one of yours in the beginning too.
Oh yeah.
Brittany, I didn't bring it up. I love feeling strong. So you get to go after that feeling of strong right now. Like you can feel strong in your training sessions in so many different ways that don't even attach to the bling. But then when you get to the races and you get the bling, that becomes the cherry on top. So I think I want to share more about that question that I got from another listener, because I think it could be relevant and it ties into what we're talking about. So I got this message over Instagram, and I'm going to summarize it for everyone, but she basically asked, she would love my take on coming back from canceled events. So I think she had 2 races canceled last year and another one this year already. And she had used my 5 steps to set bold goals you actually achieve to set a goal for the race. And then it was canceled, and it left her feeling, I think she said like empty and like deflated. I think those are the questions that she said. She was feeling deflated and not being able to follow through on completing the event, and then struggling to build back up mentally for another goal, for the next phase of it whenever races do come back. And I might do another episode on this in itself, but I wanted to bring it in because I think it ties together all that we've talked about. You know, what she was doing without realizing it was putting her athletic identity into the race and her emotional energy into whether she could follow through on it or not. And she was focusing only on what went wrong and not what went right. And I think in this year, you know, when we move back, like out of the judgment, sometimes we can find ourselves back into this, like everything that's going wrong. And what I did was I challenged her to write out 3 celebrations, 3 things that went right, 3 things she wants to celebrate related to the races. And what came out, it was such a beautiful thing, was that what she wanted to gain from the races, she actually got out of her training. Of course, because it's not about the race. It's about who we become. It's about who we take into it and who we become on the other side, right? Who you become and not what you do. So this might, like I said, it might be relevant to other people listening. And I wanted to share that because we all have dealt, I'm sure everyone listening has dealt with at least one canceled race in the last year or so. So if you're finding that, I encourage you to spend a little bit of time on celebrating what did go right, even if what went right is that you set the goal in the first place. That's fantastic. Let's see. I want to go back to questions. Is it Kesha? I hope I'm saying that right. Keisha. I get to do most of my rides and swims with my husband by my side, and we find great ways to keep it fun. I think this was answering the how do you find joy in training, which is so good. Yeah. Maria, for me, it's a sense of accomplishment and the desire to ride with people stronger than me. Staying with the group is fun. Yeah, those small little, you know, for everyone, it's going to be different how you get to define it. But it starts with taking that opportunity to define it. Okay. The last thing I wanted to touch on, we've kind of breezed like through it. You've brought it up in a couple different ways, Brittany, but if there's anything else, I want to talk about applying the tools, right? You sprinkled it in. But I already said it 2 or 3 times. You're an example of what's possible.
Thanks.
And I want to know at least like 1 or 2 more changes that you've noticed in your training in the last 3 months and how you see that kind of elevating the rest of the year, races or no races.
Yeah. The first thing that jumps in, well, there's a couple, but one of the first things jumps into my mind is being willing to do things differently than I've been doing since I've really been focused on racing and training. So I am very much a morning person. I love getting up early and getting things done. Mm-hmm. And I was finding that in order to get up early and do, let's say, a really tough run, I wasn't able to fuel effectively. So I would switch that to later on in the afternoon. And I do right now also have the luxury of that time. And in the past, I didn't always have that luxury. Like while on tour, I had a very certain amount of time that I had off and time I had to be at the arena. So with that caveat in mind and knowing that everyone has different demands on their schedule versus like whether it's job or family obligations, like once you puzzle that into your schedule, but to be able to say, okay, I'm going to do something that feels a little bit uncomfortable, working out or running at a different time of day to see what happens, has immediately changed how I can view training. That I don't, okay, I have to do this run this way, which I think also affects or has been illuminated in COVID. You know, like, oh, I have to swim in a pool 3 times a week. Well, that wasn't an option for many months and still really not an option in Southern California that is always feasible because it just isn't. And we found finding ways around it that aren't necessarily as comfortable as showing up with a swim bag 3 times a week, always the same pool. So being able to shift that and knowing that it's okay to do things that make you uncomfortable in order to create change. Because if we stay with the same exact routine and same exact thing and same exact mental plan and thought
Patterns, yeah.
and patterns, that it's not going to get you the kind of change and the kind of result. And I know that Vanessa, you and I have talked about that, and coming away with that light bulb in the past 3 months has been really, really great too. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a good one to bring up, because it seems it kind of ties into things like keeping us what's the word I want to say, kind of like in a box of, like, I consider myself a morning person. Like, I need to get my sessions in the morning, right?
Right.
That's when I'm at my best.
Yeah.
But sometimes we don't give ourselves the opportunity to try the thing that feels more uncomfortable, as you're saying, right?
Yeah.
And when we're willing to tap into that discomfort, when it's even just the time of day or eating something different, then it puts us into a higher level of problem solving and curiosity that always, always, always impacts how we race. Like, it gives us more of an open mind to see things differently on the race course.
Yeah.
Which is what we're doing. Like, we're here to progress and get stronger and get faster and get fitter. And that's the way that we use our minds, is that we are willing to think differently to get different results. And we practice that by even just doing our training session at a different time of day. And I think that's a great example. Or taking us out of our routines and being willing to problem solve and figure it out, and not just throw up our hands like, oh, it didn't work, right? Like, oh, it snowed, I can't run, I'm just going to call it, right?
Yeah.
And our willingness to put in the work to figure out a way will ultimately be a huge teller to the commitment that we have to our goals.
Yeah.
When we're back on the race course, but even the goals that we have inside of our training. Yeah.
Yep.
So good. So good.
I did apply a lot of that, the being uncomfortable aspect as well, to my outside of sport. So because I'm home with COVID, and I'm a puppeteer, and I'm like, what am I gonna do? Being able to say, I can't do the same puppet things that I've always been able to do and rely on the same types of jobs. So to kind of look outside of that comfort zone and start doing things that I had been afraid and then avoiding doing, and now have applied the same work to my puppet career. So hopefully I'll have my puppet website and my puppet reel up, and something that I've been wanting to do.
Yes.
It's been a goal, but I've pushed it aside so that because it was uncomfortable, because it was a scary task to undertake, and then asking for help on it. It was scary to ask for help, because it was admitting that I needed help and that I wanted something for myself.
But you're willing to think about it differently, or at least be willing to be with the discomfort to move you forward.
Yeah. And it wasn't as bad as I thought.
It never is, because our brains are really amazing at making the worst case scenario, like catastrophizing it. It's not that, it's not ever as bad as we think it's going to be. Also, Brittany's an author, so her book is going to be coming out at some point. I don't know. I'll probably talk about it this year, next year, but I've read part of it. It's fantastic. So know that that's coming. Okay.
And it has nothing. This book has nothing to do with triathlon or dinosaurs. So
she's multifaceted. All right.
Indefatigable.
If there are any other questions, feel free to drop them in the comment box. And if you did not already subscribe to the podcast to have the chance to win, you want to do that like ASAP, because Ellen's going to be hopping on. Ellen and Jamila are going to be hopping back on to choose a winner here very soon. But that is what we wanted to cover today on athletic identity, but now called athletic nature, right? Motivation, and how to apply these tools in many different ways. And if you didn't get your question answered here, you can send me an Instagram message. You can email me. You can you can find me. I'm on socials. I'm happy to take questions. I'm also happy to take other podcast suggestions. Like I mentioned, imposter syndrome will be coming up in a future episode. Yes. So I think Ellen and Jamila are going to hop back on and share some additional really important information before we do the giveaway. Hey, I love technology.
Hey.
It's so cool. So cool.
There we go. I think I'm unmuted now. Everyone
Yep.
hear me okay?
Yep.
Awesome. Well, I don't know about you, Jamila, but did that get you pretty pumped up?
Oh, and so listen, I'm writing down my 3 things that went well this week now and kind of focusing in. So yes, I'm super excited.
Yeah, I love the idea about feelings. Like, how do you want to feel? I think that was my biggest takeaway. Yeah, so thank you so much, Vanessa.
Absolutely. You're welcome.
We just want to remind everyone to stick around to the very end because we will be drawing the prize winners. But first, we just wanted to share with everyone something that's pretty special to Live Feisty, the Feisty team. And Jamila is the community manager, community innovator of the Feisty team. And so we're going to just give you a little bit of an inside look to what goes on at the Feisty team. So Jamila, what is the Feisty team?
Hi, Ellen. So, last year was crazy. And in June, like Feisty was like, hey, we have to do something, And so they came up with the Feisty team to kind of empower, athletes. And you don't have to be a triathlete. You can be involved in any sport, but really just a place where feisty minded people could get together and, fellowship and communicate, and we learn together, and we, virtually train together. And so, over the last 6 months, we've come together and we've continued our quest to make the world feistier and a place to connect in triathlon and other sports. And so we meet every month, and there's a expert that comes in that helps us in different areas. And it's just, my gosh, like I can't express it enough, like in 2020, how much being a part of the Feisty team just really kind of changed some things for I know me personally. So yeah.
Cool. And we were wondering, is anyone here listening from the Feisty team? If so, let us know in the chat box and maybe just drop your favorite thing about the Feisty team. Maybe, your favorite month or your favorite expert session. We did have Vanessa 1 month, right? She was our Feisty expert for I think Self-Care November.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. So, and so Jamila, what else, when you sign up for the Feisty team, what do you get?
Oh man. So first and foremost, we do a monthly huddle with expert guests. So we've had Vanessa. I've even had the opportunity to lead a huddle, but Lindsay Corbin, Sarah True. We've done sessions on strength training, open water swimming. We've done goal setting, just, all areas where you wouldn't mind some growth. Like we really spend time developing the mind, body, and kind of soul of the athlete.
Mm-hmm.
There's sponsorship. So we have big sponsor discounts from multiple different companies like Orca, Forum, Perspective, Zilios. Like it's just so much. We do challenges each month to stay motivated. One of the best challenges in the world is the pineapple one. I've actually been practicing. I've already started practicing for the next pineapple challenge, which is in October, but that I'm gonna win this year. And then just a community of feisty, like-minded people. We have discussions about everything. We have a book club, we are working in virtual training. Just that way, I know for me, joining endurance, it was about the racing and the training, but it was really about the community and the people that I spent that time with. And so just creating a place where we can spend time together and be around people who are like-minded.
Awesome. And I hear there's a training camp coming up in February.
I'm so excited. Oh yeah, we're gonna do the virtual training camp, and we're gonna have Q&A sessions. We're gonna have workouts. It's
Zumba?
just gonna be a good time. Zumba, yeah, I'm gonna do strong by Zumba.
Mhm.
So yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be a good time. So I just have a couple more questions for you. Let's just cover this one first. So there sounds like there's a lot of challenges. Like what happens if you don't have time to participate in the challenges?
I mean, so you don't have to, we have members that participate in everything. We have members that, don't participate in much, but they're just part of the community. You still have access to the sponsored discount. You still have access to the other initiatives like the online courses, the events discounted. Where we're different is like we have a bunch of sponsors. We get discounts on a lot of different stuff as opposed to just one team sponsor from one major brand. We have a plethora of people supporting the team, and then the swag and the prizes. So yeah, it's a lot of variety for as much or as little participation as you want.
Yeah, and I think it sounds like if you really take advantage of the discounts, that'll basically make up the membership price if you use all of those discounts. So how much does it cost?
So it's $239.99 for the year or $22.99 monthly. But I tell you, we give away more than that in the monthly prizes. It's insane. Just 2 months ago, we gave away the Form goggles.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my
Yep.
gosh. Like, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, so we have some really cool deals. The entire line of Zillio's products went out to someone. So, I mean, I think cost and worth are two very different things. And I think that, for what you get from our community, that, yeah, you can't beat it.
Awesome. Yeah, and there is a special right now. So if you sign up for the year on the Feisty team, you'll get a discount to the Feisty shop, and you can get something nice like this, a nice Feisty hoodie. And Jamila's wearing some merch from the Feisty store too. So yeah, we got lots of fun merch. We have some Girls Gone Gravel merch in there too. So yeah, if you sign up for the year now, we will make sure to get you a $25 to the Feisty shop. Yeah, well, thanks, Jamila. I love the Feisty team. We have, I think, the greatest group of people, and I'm excited to see it grow and spread the Feist. Awesome. Well, I guess this brings us to the prizes. So thank you everyone who tagged, posted on social, came here and listened. It was a great event. I hope you all got something out of it. And so we have the first winner for the Feisty gift shop is going to be Megan. Sorry if I mess up your last name. Digia como mestas. And the winner of the one-on-one with Vanessa is Kelly D, Coach D. So if you're still listening, congratulations. Super exciting. And we will make sure to contact you. We will find you and oh yeah, of course, we forgot that. Check out feistyteam.com. That's how you join the Feisty team. But yes, we will contact the winners and make sure to get your prize. Awesome. Well, I think that's it, everybody.
Thank you for being here, everyone. And I just have to say, if you haven't seen Wedding Crashers, in Wedding Crashers, we goes, "We will find you." That's what I thought, Ellen, when you're like, "We're gonna find you. We'll find you. We'll find you winners."
Instagram, Facebook.
Yes,
we will find you.
Find you.
Yeah.
You can't escape.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, and now subscribe, listen, check out the next podcast dropping
each Monday.
Each Monday. There we go. Exciting stuff.
Yes.
All right. Take care, everyone.